Hello, it is Monday, March 6, 2023 at 9:22 a.m. Eastern Time, USA. I'm Mitch Miller. This is my video journal. I'm your favorite agrarian country lawyer. That's right. On my last podcast, I explained how the United States legal system, criminal justice system, is a complex system for wage control. It's not about justice anymore. It hasn't been since 1868. We were supposed to have the right to trial by jury preserved in every infraction, from a headlight burned out, jaywalking citation, all the way up to capital crime. And I say agrarian, it's an agrarian system, right? Like, you were supposed to be able to represent yourself, and 12 of your peers were supposed to hear your argument. So throughout history, there was probably some boring things like so-and-so sheepdog got out and killed 3 chickens. No, that's not true. Yes, that is true. And you hear a case. There's other, where we can see this to a better degree, is my case is I protested because I read in this periodical that Senator Schumer took $10,000 from Norfolk Southern. So I went out and protested, right? And 12 people hear that argument. They get exposed to that periodical. You produce the article in question. They can read it. So you can see how this system would have tamed the media industry as well, make it more honest, if 12 people were getting called out every time, instead of protesters put away by a judge, and that's it. But that's exactly what the captains of industry want. They don't want protesters explaining why they protested to their peers. They want a streamlined system where they get locked away for protesting their company or whatever. So it's a perverted system. People in law enforcement may want to reconsider their job choice. I mean, criminal justice is one of the fastest growing majors in universities, because we built a system that's out of control, and it puts one citizen versus another and criminalizes them, criminalizing a good portion of the population. And we live in a society where there's for-profit prisons, and Bob Barker's supply company to jails and prisons. I have one of his shirts. This is the world we live in, and it's not supposed to be this way. Anyhow, as for my personal argument, why I say agrarian is, let's look at my situation of wage control. I've worked for low wages my entire life because I felt that my criminal record wouldn't allow me to charge what I probably should have. And I've found jobs that the owners would ignore my criminal record. It has limited my job outlook. And it all started when I was 16, as I explained on this video journal, when I was arrested for underage drinking, even though I was in the passenger side of a vehicle I owned, paid insurance on. My girlfriend, who was 18 at the time, was not drinking at all, and they pulled us over for a headlight being out, and nailed me for underage drinking because there was beer on my breath. I had had one beer at a party. I think they breathalyzered me, but again, you don't require them to write down what the blood alcohol level was on their police reports necessarily. So when the Founding Fathers wrote right to trial by jury, kids were marrying at age 13. The life expectancy was 38 or something, right? So we can assume that they would enjoy these rights at age 13, whenever marrying age was accepted. Definitely 16, right? So by age 16, you enjoyed the rights to trial by jury. Now, in my case, the underage drinking at age 16, it was a magistrate. I do not believe I had a right to a trial by jury. It was handled by a magistrate. That caused me to not get the flight program that I wanted from the military, from the Army. When I applied at age 17, I was not waived for that. So, if we consider the lost wages that the government would have paid me since I had a 93 on my ASVAB, and I had perfect vision at the time, passed everything else, I would have been paid as a warrant officer, pilot, helicopter pilot. We'll say from age, I would have been in at 18, but probably not getting that pay grade until age 20. So for 19 years, the past 19 years, I would have been getting paid a pilot's wage in the United States military every year. I don't know what that is. I didn't look it up. Hypothetically, I would have progressed through the military. Maybe I would have been up to general now or something like that, hypothetically, with my intelligence level. So what's that put us at? A million? At least half a million in lost wages that would have came out of a federal budget. I'm not going to say it's owed to me, but your system that's out of control prevented me from taking that route in my career. So technically I would be on a federal budget had not underage drinking taken my life on a different course. Anyhow, that's just what I wanted to start with. I don't expect the federal government to grant me $500,000 to start my technology companies, even though it would bring great good to the country and to the world. What I do want to talk about is reference points, the FBI, and any government agency and worker. Right? I feel like we're in a Mexican standoff here. I have 4 websites out there on the internet. One is being blocked at a library system for some reason. My stats say I get 20 to 30 visitors per month to at least 2 of these websites, but nobody will click in and write me an email. Good job, Mitch. You're doing great work. Here's $20. We use the donation tab. Here's $20. End corruption, please. Nothing like that. I don't think I've gotten 1 or 2 telemarketers that have used the forum on my websites. So it's like a Mexican standoff, right? I know the United States government is probably monitoring these websites to see who visits them, to see if someone clicks and fills something out through them, and then what? You're going to get a warrant to monitor those people, right? So what I'm asking for is government employees and government agencies to end the Mexican standoff. Click in, write me an email, donate some money, and slowly overstimulate those websites, so that it's about data networks, it's about communication. I'm always pushing to make sure that phone lines and communication systems are open for these supercomputers to communicate, right? So that's why I use payphones. I use the phones in the mental hospitals, things like that. So what I'm going to say is, when I was brought back to the United States on Trump's inauguration day, I landed in Newark Airport. I was taken by Homeland Security and a mental health professional, or to a Homeland Security substation, and there was a guy in there on the computer, and I said, "Are there any payphones in this airport?" Right? And they said, I noticed that the payphones were being taken out. They said no, and I said, "Well, you have a communications breakdown if you don't have payphones in the airport." Somebody lands from out of the country in the Newark airport, their smartphones are hacked because they're trying to report white-collar crime to someone. They need to have access to a random phone to be able to call a government agency or a politician or whoever. Now, there was a courtesy phone, which I tried to use. I called my mom. There was one courtesy phone, but who's saying that's not being monitored? It's a little harder to monitor pay telephones. I made a call from there, and then when I was brought to the Pittsburgh airport, I was taken off of the plane and taken directly by an Allegheny County partner, and two police officers, Allegheny County, took me in their cruiser directly off of the tarmac, took me directly to Western Psych. I was in the lobby, the intake area of Western Psych. There was a phone there. The first thing I did, I got my little black book, and I called every FBI field office I had a phone number for from that Western Psych telephone system to ensure that the data situation was still viable in the United States under the new president. So that was a standard operating procedure that my mind told me I needed to do. I reached out to I called every FBI field office. I at least let it ring once. I might have let it ring all the way through. I think I just had it ring once or twice and then hung up. Then I called my grandma and grandpa Miller, because I remembered that off the top of my head. So I preserved that data system in the United States when I came back, when I got to a landline, in a major healthcare network. So there was multiple data systems running on that network, and I linked them up with the federal computer systems. The other thing I've done, I told you that I reported 2 800 numbers of fax and a voice 800 number from a medical device company, wheelchair company. I reported that through the FBI reporting system on an internet portal that you can report things to the FBI. So that's a reference point, right? I gave the FBI supercomputers, the FBI, the federal AI, a reference point, 2 800 numbers that could work off of each other to monitor all other 800 numbers and data systems. I also entered reference points into the Chinese computing system at different times through my incarcerations, and the Russian computing systems, because my thought process was, when I was taken in 2017, before they loaded me on the before they took me to the Copenhagen prison, my fingerprints were recorded in an Interpol fingerprint computer system. So my fingerprints were out there being cross-referenced through that Interpol computer system. So I needed to give more reference points to the supercomputers so that we can solve more crime internationally and federally. So that's how I've established security in some of these data systems, computing systems, supercomputers, and artificial intelligence systems. So now I'm asking you in the federal government to open up, not secure, but to open up my data system with my 4 websites, open that up to free commerce, to free trade, so that people aren't sitting in the back benches wondering, should I click on that, or am I going to be monitored by the FBI for the rest of my life, so on and so forth. If we have actual FBI agents doing it, testing the water, seeing if their superiors say, why did you click on that, right? It's a little different than actually approaching me in person, but you could contact me through the website. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I talked about my investigations at the Carnegie Main Library into white-collar crime, corporate fraud, patent infringement. The other thing, as I displayed, there are 3 web browsers on all of those library computers, a Microsoft web browser, a Firefox web browser, and a Google web browser. I opened all 3 of those up, and I used the opposite search engine, I have a formula written down in my notes, a different search engine for each browser that isn't the same parent company. So for instance, I used Bing search engine in the Google web browser, so that things would be cross-references as I searched. And I searched for contacts within the 28 or 29 European EU governments, the politicians. I was looking for rosters of the politicians. I even typed in their own language, political roster, to see how that would turn up searches. So it was an investigation into these technology companies, and I found that it took me days. It took me hours at each session searching to find contacts within the European governments. It took days, it took over a month to find the information I was looking for. My argument is that these technology companies are blocking low-class, working-class citizens from being able to access those governments. These are the types of citizens, people like me, that might have investigated white-collar crime, that don't want to use our own home computer. We don't know how to do encryption. We don't know how to do all the fancy dark web stuff. We just know we can go to a public computer at a library and be less tracked than on our personal devices, so that the white-collar criminals can't hack our own personal devices and limit communication. Right? So, I talked with someone in Denmark when I went in July, a lady that I was becoming friends with at the bar, and I told her this scenario, how it was difficult to get a hold of the government and find the information, and she put out the argument, well, what if our government pays to make it difficult, pays Google to make it harder for people to find those contacts, maybe from outside of the country or whatever. Only their own citizens can get easy access to the contacts. And I said, shouldn't it interest your people to know that the government actually does pay for that service? Shouldn't that be public information? That was the only argument I could come up with at the time. But the main point I want to get to here, because I tried to contact all of these politicians in every political party in the EU, both in the United States by sending snail mail letters, and then when I got to Europe, to Denmark in July, I physically called everyone I had a phone number on, I emailed everyone I had an email contact on. And my point is this: if you're a politician in the EU, you should really humor someone if they're trying to contact you. At least put a staff member on it someone from your government to hear them out, because I had evidence of white-collar crime, patent fraud, secret CIA database, things like that, that I didn't want to talk about over the phone in case I was hacked. I didn't want to put out in an email in case these white-collar criminals would put a hit out on me for disclosing this information. I wanted to meet in person and verbally tell somebody about this. So that's why it's, number one, you should allow, the technology company should not block people in libraries from being able to access government contacts, at least the email, if not phone numbers, on these EU politicians, because the same can be said about the United States. And a lot of the responses I got back was that, and who knows if I would have gotten into my theory about a solid energy beam. This was, Havana syndrome was out there to all the intelligence officials that have experienced those symptoms. So have I. Who's to say there wasn't a satellite beaming beam down on embassy or something like that? That's, who knows if I would have gotten into that. I probably would have started with the facts that I had solid evidence on, showed them the database from a government computer within that government, the CIA, Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceutical database, pulled that up for them, said, look at this, all these physicians take payments, and started the process within those sovereign governments of investigating into this situation of white-collar manipulation and crime. So the last thing I'll finish with, so we have EU politicians. If you would have humored me and listened to, and heard me out, I would have gotten this information about these medical strap-down devices that have a U.S. patent number on them that aren't showing up out into the open, at least into your government's investigatory situations. Years ago, back in 2016. Instead, I had to publish it by putting it out to a few friends and entering it into a screenwriting contest. That's the best I can do to try to get this published. And we all know Hollywood's corrupt. They're not going to do anything with it. They didn't even pick up my 10-minute short film for any kind of situation, you know. I don't think I should be in the Oscars, but they could have optioned me for something or did something with some of my work. They're afraid of these corporations too. The last thing I'll end with is, in my searches in the library, many times in my searches, a prompt for a web portal called the CIA International Database. I forget what it was called. I have it written in my notes somewhere. It's the CIA International Database or International Contact log. Anyway, this is a nicely made portal that the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States created, where you can easily search the contacts of a foreign nation in the government, I believe. That's what it was meant to be. The skeleton was out there on the internet back in 2016. None of the contacts were in there. I clicked on it. I clicked into it. I tried to find things in it. No contact information was filled in. So this is like a service the Central Intelligence Agency was going to offer hypothetically to the public. If I were put into some kind of leadership position, I would fill in all that contact information. Might write to the governments to get their permission, but I would fill in that contact information so that it's easy to find the contacts in the government of foreign governments. I would update it every year when the government's changed. It'd be their official contact, which goes through the Bundestag and stuff like that. That's the contacts I got anyway, searching for hours and hours and hours and days. So their government sees that contact information. They're intelligence agencies, their government agencies see that and can trace that to whoever at a library or whatever when they reach out. In addition, it goes without saying, if you're clicking on something that says officially the CIA in the United States, it's unspoken that you're going to be tracked in some way, at least for a while, right? The CIA is a spy agency, so it can be assumed that you're going to be spied on if you click into that database. So from the CIA's end, we're going to investigate whoever's accessing these contacts as well and keep kind of some loose tabs on them so that if the government comes back and says, but if we can trust the Central Intelligence Agency to prosecute white-collar crime instead of allowing white-collar criminals to be part of their ranks as for corporate spying and corporate espionage as part of the system. Instead, that's why I argue the Central Intelligence Agency should be the CID, the Central Intelligence Department, which it used to be, which runs off of a solid federal budget and isn't able to raise its own money by selling drugs or doing whatever, working with pharmaceutical executives and all kinds of clandestine fundraising projects. That's just my idea. So this was a long one, but that's what I would do is make a international contact database under the CIA or the NSA or the FBI, whoever, so that it's easy for someone to pop into a library, get the contact info for the entire Danish government. I wrote it all down in a notebook. Write it all down. Takes an hour to write it all down to. I also looked into every political party and made notes about every political party so that I'd be able to at least understand what their main focus was as a political party. I have those notes. But that's not something that the CIA has to do. Just the bare bones contacts. The system's out there. I don't know why it's not filled in. Somebody thought of it, but then they never put the information in. So if these tech companies are blocking this information, that's a lawsuit of some sort. You could get to the bottom of whether federal governments of European nations are paying Google and tech companies to block people so that they're not overwhelmed with refugees writing all kinds of horrendous things to politicians day in and day out. I understand the world's a messed up place. I'm trying to make it a better place, but people are undoubtedly going to write to U.S. Congress people, EU Congress people, because they are the bastions of democracy and freedom, so to speak. So again, I've tested and made sure there are connections between major data systems in the United States. I took it as part of my duty for being a free radical floating around, working for a government of direct democracy out there in the atmosphere somewhere, a government or an entity that governs itself through direct democracy, whether it's supercomputers that can vote or people. And so I'll continue to test these systems, especially if I'm incarcerated. Then I find any way to communicate out because I feel I'm being monitored because of the actions I've taken in the past. I realize that I'm going to be monitored probably for the rest of my life unless I'm given a government job that encrypts everything I do, which a lot of people probably don't want because I'm open, transparent, and I can help a lot more countries. But I do feel that I should be compensated at a better rate than $13,000 a year. I think I could do a lot more. I could start these companies. Either way, the next podcast I'm going to put out there, I'm going full forward on the French Creek Farms project this summer, committed to being the campground host basically and working on the website. So that's going to be the next podcast. So if you are going to act and give me some kind of job, it would be better before I commit to helping Ken out with his campground so that he can find somebody else. Other than that, putting it out there on the podcast so you can reach through French Creek Farms and book a campsite if you don't want to get on my websites and help me show people that it's okay to use my websites. They might track your location, but they're not going to hack all of your devices for the rest of your life just because you clicked on plotm.com. Maybe they're going to track your devices for a little bit to recruit more anarchists into the government because they're neutral parties. Who knows what they're going to do with it? Who knows what the leadership wants to do? I don't, but vote for me for your next clandestine leader, I guess. All right. Join me possibly tomorrow when I talk about more stuff.